tell me your name and what you do in the world?
Yeah, of course. My name is Bailey Anderson. In the world, I do many things, but I currently teach at the University of North Carolina in Asheville. I choreograph dances and I write primarily about disability right now in early modern dance.
Okay. And how did you find about the Azule residency program?
That was a really great serendipitous moment. I actually am close friends with Katie St. Clair, who's also been an artist in residence here, and I lived with her for some time and took some of her classes, and her and I have had lots of conversations about dance, disability, and the arts. So she came up, I think, a year and a half ago and recommended that I look into the place.
Yeah, she was recently here, you know that, right?
Yeah, last week, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be cool. And as far as pursuing a dance modality, what is your project that you have brought to Azule?
Yeah, so I brought this project that looks at disability in early modern dance, writing, letters, choreography, specifically focused around 3 artists, Martha Graham, Doris Humphrey, and Ted Shawn. And that comes from archival material I got from the New York Public Library as a fellow there 2 years ago. So at this point, I'm culling through that and looking at the way that people talk about their relationships with disability and illness and aging. Specifically, Martha Graham talks about differing eyesight as she ages, as well as having arthritis. Ted Shawn talks about having polio and having dance cure his polio. And then Doris Humphrey actually has a hip injury and hip surgery, and so there's a lot of discussion about how she continues to choreograph through that.
So in terms of dance as an expression of creative potentialities, why do you think it's important to open up the conversation in what you would call concert dance or professional dance to this wider range?
It's a good question. I see disability as being really broad. It includes mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual parts of our bodies. And so to me, it exists everywhere and that people kind of move through it. Camila and I were talking about how it's not a binary, it's not yes or no, it's on a spectrum. And so I really believe it existed in all dance forms, but in concert dance, where the idea of an aesthetic, a way of being or feeling about the bodies we see on stage, privileges this hyper ableist body, this body that can do these superhuman things. Disability is sort of enmeshed within it, so that you can't really separate the entropy of the body from this hyper ableist aesthetic. So I want to, with this project, start to open that conversation about a range of aesthetics, and to also kind of rewrite the history and say disability, mental health, physical changes was always sort of there. We just haven't named it as such.
And if you said you're having difficulty finding this material prior to the 60s, how would you go about finding? Would you consult dancers, correspondence, or how deep are you willing or able to go to search for this?
Really deep. So so most of the writing currently starts in the 60s with the civil rights movement and then the disability rights movement. And so at the same time in dance, we have the development of concert dance improvisation. Improvisation exists in African diasporic communities before that, but we point to Judson Church as like the beginning of this opening of all these different dancers being able to come together. So I want to go before that to about the 1930s, because a lot of modern dance points to those folks as... Like
Alvin Ailey or what have you?
Yes, okay. Alvin Ailey will point back to these folks and say, these are our foundations. Martha Graham Dance Company, all of these large companies often stem from this. So I've looked at their correspondence, writing back and forth between each other, lots of letters to loved ones, program notes. There's a really interesting program note I have from Jose Limon, a choreographer, referring to Doris Humphrey's hip surgery. Other ones are some personal autobiographical narratives. I've got some information from Martha about herself. So I'm really kind of digging in their letters and thinking about the ways that they may have put it aside and not been talking directly about it, but that in looking back, I can see the way that they're thinking about disability or injury.
Well, it's interesting how in the culture, like I want to say this is true. I feel I learned that, FDR was wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
Apparently, he did not appear in one public broadcast, so most Americans didn't even know that that was the case. And so that to me is an interesting juxtaposition to what you say. And so it's almost like your project is to blow away this facade of perfection that doesn't exist, which is very...
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of write about this challenge between, there are all these stories, and I found them documented, that Martha, when she had really kind of hard arthritic bouts, would have people help her walk onto the stage or even carry her on the stage. The curtain would open, she'd stand and wave, the curtain would close, and they'd help her walk.
Wow.
So this idea of a facade and also the, maintenance of a way of presenting oneself. I'm not saying that I'm criticizing her, but she's doing it for a reason that to me is embedded in ableism in dance. So it's probably also self-preservation in some points, but it does something to us as a group that limits the way we think of ourselves being able to be presented to an audience and to each other.
Mm. And where are you planning on taking this project? Like just blue skying it? Where is your dream or whatnot?
Blue skying it. There's this large organization, actually, the Dance History Scholars and the Congress on Research in Dance just fused. So there's this new big dance kind of house that publishes a lot. And so I would love it to be presented through them, primarily because of the peer review process and the fact that I really would hope this to be a seminal text used in dance history courses at university and colleges across the nation. I was saying earlier that, like, as a professor, I had trouble finding dance history texts that looked at specifically American concert dance pre-1960s when teaching dance history. So I would like this to be alongside conversations about how Martha Graham was exporting her material for cultural products. I'd love it to be alongside these other texts that we have. That would be my dream.
Okay, that's cool.
I would love to also create sort of I think this is too much for like this residency, but at some point I'd love to present it and share it in an embodied way and find ways to choreograph it, find some pictures of these folks. So that would be like another kind of outcropping of it.
And how has, obviously you see this space is equipped for dancing, but also just for silent contemplation. So what resources of this space have been helpful to you?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that right away I asked about the space was if I could leave things out. Something that's really helpful is like that this has been spreading, and as I keep working, I cut things up and I move things around, and I like a very tactile writing process. So being able to leave things and come in and out of them throughout the day frequently is really helpful for my writing practice. As well, every day I start dancing, and I have a warm-up that I do that...
Like in this space here?
In this space, yeah. So that allows me to feel ready to sit down and write. I also appreciate the hiking. I think best while hiking usually, and when working with new frictions in a piece, it's helpful to have places to go and then places to return so that I can process what's happening.
Yeah, so is that the things that make this residency experience more fruitful for your process than just being at home?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is particular to my current situation, but there isn't enough space, nor is I wouldn't be able to live
Oh.
with this out. So it as well, like because I'm in such a small space, the horizontal organization would be my whole home. So that process, as well as the space that's quiet, we talked earlier about how much I appreciate the space to sort of the physical and mental space to kind of devote to one project is really a gift.
Oh, I was going to, so that would be my, I guess, last question, because we had talked about earlier the idea of being a more solitary person versus, and so you as an artist, how does being in such an isolated, solitary place fit into your schema?
Yeah. For me, as a thinker, doer, creator, I love collaboration and connection, but especially when I feel like with this project, I feel like there's so much talking to me from the writing in the archives. Like there are many conversations, and having the space to really think and listen to like what these writings are telling me is really lovely. And also having just although it's a very large space, a space that has got that quiet, it just allows for me to feel less overwhelmed by all of the noise or chaos and a little bit more subtly attuned to different thoughts and sensations.
That probably every artist could at some point benefit from that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Any last thoughts?
No, it's amazing. I'm so I feel quite privileged to be here. Like there's this interesting juxtaposition of feeling like really grateful.
Oh, that's so great. Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much, Bailey.
Thank you.
Bye.